All right, what's up, you dirt bags? It is a beautiful, beautiful day. We are so excited to be here for a probably the most ginormous episode we've ever had. We have the man himself, author, speaker, entrepreneur, coach, dirtbag himself. He is a multi-time author, and he has written the book, as we all know it, Profit First for Contractors. The man Shawn Van Dyke. We just wrapped up with the episode. I'm so excited for you guys to listen to it. Huge shout out to Benjamin Holmgren for making this connection for us. It is an honor to have him on the Dirtbags podcast. And Ben, as you guys know, has been a great friend of mine. He's been on the show a couple times. So Ben, thank you for making this introduction. And Shawn was just such a pleasure to have on the show. And he's a giver as well. He really wants to give to you guys and give you guys knowledge or information or inspiration. And I think he did such a great job on this episode. So a little bit shorter, you guys will hear. I think we had 60 minutes. So I tried to cram in as much as we could, as much value as we could. And I definitely know that, or I would say I would encourage follow-up questions. We'll make sure to get Shawn connected with you guys. And as you heard in the last episode, I want you guys to buy his book as you go through this episode, because as the way I asked the questions to Shawn and the way we went through the process is through the book, right? And so it's one of those episodes where you can read the book and follow along as you're listening to the podcast. I hope it's one of those too where you guys can listen back on. This episode is published April 2026, but this profit first system is really basic. It's foundational in a business and especially in a construction company. So it should live on. I don't want to say forever, but it should live on for many years here. So whenever you're listening to this episode, welcome. Thank you for listening. This is the Dirtbags podcast, and my name is Luke Agabrotton, and I get to host this episode. This is episode number 121, and just so excited for you guys to dive in here. As always, before, I want to give you guys his Instagram handle so you guys can shoot him a follow, shoot him a message if you listen to this episode. If you guys have any questions, feel free to send him a message. No guarantee he gets back to all of them, of course, but it's always fun for our guests to see that you guys are listening. So at Shawn Van Dyke, that's ShawnVanDyke. And we just dive into it here. So thank you guys for listening. I just wrapped up. I don't know if you guys have ever been on a men's retreat, but highly recommend it. I just went on my second one this last weekend, came back, and I knew I wanted to record this overview for this episode, and just encourage anyone out there too, if as you guys are looking to become the best version of yourself that you can be, like really that's what we're trying to do, right? As we're ideally listening to podcasts, as we're running our businesses, as we're the way we treat our spouse, the way we treat our kids, the way we treat our friends, our team, whatever it looks like. We're just really trying to be the best version of ourselves. So I had a lot of time to reflect on that this weekend, and it was just on my heart to tell you guys that, of just keep going, keep at it, keep bringing the energy every day. And also too, I know a lot of you guys listening already know this, but I'm a believer, I'm a Christian, and I'm not nervous or scared to say that. And I more on the other side, I'm so proud of that, of my love for Jesus. And just want to make sure I took the second to say that again too, because I don't say it enough. And if anyone out there is listening and you don't know Jesus and you are curious, you want to reach out to me, shoot me a message. I mean, that is just, I would be happy to talk about it, or connect you with people that are my mentors and that help me through this all, and just develop that love and understanding for Jesus. So it's just on my heart to talk about that for a second as we dive in, because as business owners, as spouses, as a father or a mother, or just trying to be yourself, sometimes we get lost. We get lost in the day-to-day world. We get lost in everything else that's going on. So if there's any encouragement here, it's just find the people that help you find yourself. And I hope that we can continue to build this community of incredible people that have allowed us to do that. So with that, I mean, thank you guys for listening. Thank you to our amazing sponsors. Obviously, as you guys know, Sledgehammer, Eljen, Charlie Huff. You guys will hear from them in the episode here. Thank you to Shawn for coming on the podcast, Ben for the recommendation, Keegan for editing all these clips for you guys, Brandon for producing and editing the podcast, and just all you guys for making this a reality. We're over 4 years in of the Dirtbags podcast. You've seen tons of iterations of it, and yeah, it's just been an absolute journey. So I hope you guys have an incredible day, whatever day it is you're listening to this. Hope you guys dive in. You take something from this. You don't have to adopt the entire system. I will say, I think I bring it up in the episode. I implemented Profit First, so it's a system that's been around for a long time. But Mike Michalowicz wrote the first book, Profit First, and then Shawn Van Dyke wrote this second book, which is Profit First for contractors specifically. So obviously, in our business, we have a marketing agency, Phaser Marketing. I implemented Profit First about maybe a year and a half ago, and it's completely changed my business. And the cool thing about it is it's very simple. It's very foundational. I can't imagine running my business without it, because now as we go to pay taxes, we pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes every year. So every quarter we go to pay taxes, there's money set aside. And I don't have to worry about pulling money from a business checking account to pay taxes, right? And then as we go to make payroll, we have an operating expenses account. As we go to pay ourselves as the owner, as the CEO, there's always money in there to pay yourself as the owner. And then also too, as you just have the holding account, the income account, but as you have the profit account, and that's really what this method is built off of, is this Parkinson's law. I should just stop talking about it because I know Shawn's going to talk about it in the episode, but it gets me so excited because it's really simple, right? And you don't have to start at 15% profit every transaction. Let's start at 1%, just to make sure that we're taking profit every single transaction. And we're setting aside taxes. We're setting aside operating expenses. We're setting aside owner's comp. And so it's a very simple, very basic foundational tool that every business, in my opinion, should have some pieces of, if not running on the entire system. So would love to hear you guys' thoughts on this. Reach out to me, reach out to Shawn. And if you own a construction company, this will be more relevant to you. It's Profit First for Contractors by Shawn Van Dyke. You can buy the book on Amazon. If you're listening to this and you don't run a construction company like myself, I would look at Mike Michalowicz's book, Profit First. And it's very applicable for either business. So with that, I've done enough blabbing. Had to add a couple more minutes to this episode since it's a little shorter for you guys. And very grateful for today. Very grateful for this episode. Let's dive into it. I couldn't be more excited. Brandon, if you could cue the music, let's have a great day. We are diving into episode number 121, Profit First for Contractors, with the man, Shawn Van Dyke. Let's go. All right, what's up, you dirtbags? My name is Luke Agabraten, and I will be your host of this gigantic episode number 121 of the Dirtbags podcast. As you heard in the overview, we have a huge episode for you guys today. I couldn't be more excited to welcome in to the Dirtbags studio not only serial entrepreneur, international coach, a dirtbag himself for over 20 years, two-time author. I mean, just an absolute stud. So I want to welcome in to the Dirtbag studio, Mr. Shawn Van Dyke. How we doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing great, Luke. Thanks. I mean, I've been called a dirtbag plenty of times, but never as a compliment. So that's a first time. I like that.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, we take that very seriously here. So that is an absolute compliment. As we dive into a little bit of your history, I mean, as I mentioned there, obviously the big topic we'll talk about on this episode is the Profit First system for contractors. Before we dive into that, would love to give our listeners a little bit more about you, how you got started and just, how you got into this construction world and then really the numbers and the business side of construction.
Sure. Yeah, I think most of my career I've stumbled into most stuff. Probably early on when I was coming out of college, I thought I had a plan, but then life throws you some curveballs. So if we go all the way back there, I graduated college with a couple of degrees in engineering, civil engineering, and structural engineering. So I did the engineering thing for several years, and then as I like to joke around, is that engineers are great. No offense to anybody, but I didn't know how to build anything.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to get on the construction site. So worked for a large commercial contractor on the project management side. That led me into really a passion of mine was real estate development. So I worked for a real estate developer, traveling around I'm in Knoxville, Tennessee, so in the
Hmm.
Southeast, in the Midwest, building, retail shops and Walmarts, Lowe's, Home Depot, all of that, all of that stuff was great. Loved it. But I was on the road 3 or 4 days a week, just
Yeah.
married, couple of kids, and my wife was like, "Glad you like your job, but this isn't going to work out so well as you being a father." So my first business was a real estate development and construction management business, and I was doing that here in Knoxville, Tennessee. Then that was 2005, and then 2008 hit, and you're pretty young, so you might. I don't know if you remember back in those days, but many of your listeners will when the bank
Yeah.
stopped lending money to especially developers. So did a pivot, started a construction company, a remodeling company, did that for a few years. And then one of my trade contractors, trim and millwork guy, I went to church with him, and his business was really blowing up because he was super niche, but knew nothing about running a business. And again, he was a sub to me, and he came to me
Hmm.
one day and said, "Hey, I think I need to hire somebody to run the business." And I was, thought I was just kind of consulting as a friend. I said, "Yeah, that's a really good idea. People bring him in, CEOs, COOs, really great idea if you want to grow your business." He was like, "Great. Why don't you do it?" And I was like, "No, I got my own thing going on," but he's a really good salesman. Anyway, so I was the COO of that trim and millwork business for about 4 years. We went for, I think I was the sixth employee. By the time I left, we had 22 to 25
Wow.
guys and gals. So then that's when I left and started this coaching thing because I thought, oh, I think I pulled on my engineering background to say, oh, it's just about systems. And so I'm a nerd for systems and numbers.
Yeah.
Again, stumbled my way into kind of coaching. I didn't even know coaching was a thing. I hired a business coach, and then just started again. I couldn't do it now, but 10 years ago, I just started DMing people on Instagram
Hmm.
and saying, "Hey, I'm kind of a nerd for this kind of stuff. If you want some help," and then kind of built a following. That's back in the day before the bots and
The bots. Yeah.
the
Seriously.
algorithm wasn't quite what it was now. So yeah, that's where I started, and then I thought, hey, I could probably start speaking at conferences, traveling around,
Hmm.
and then kind of stumbled into the whole profit first stuff, which I talk about in the book, and then had no intention of the book being anything other than a really expensive business card, especially
Hmm.
for the speaking stuff. If anyone's ever tried to become a speaker, you just have, every industry, even outside the construction industry, basket weavers have their national conventions and their industry things, and there's somebody's job to fill speaker slots.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of figured out that when people that don't know anything about the construction industry or anything about me, if they're searching on Google and they can find me and then they say, "Oh, this guy's got a book, we should reach out to him to see if he could speak." So that's really what the book was for, was just to kind of get my feet wet in the speaking industry. But I thought, well, if anybody read it, it
Yeah.
needs to be good, so I should put some time and effort into it. But did not expect that it would take off the way that it did.
Yeah, and I think we had a couple questions about this too. So profit first for contractors. Some questions were, how were you able to write this based off of Mike McCallicks's book? Is it similar? And before they read it, how does that whole system work? Is it franchised, or how did you do that?
Yeah, so again, I just kind of stumbled into it when I came across, and I tell the story in the book when my family and I were taking a 30-day trip around the country, and I was just reading a bunch of books while we were on the road. I had known Mike's work and his
Mm-hmm.
other books for a long time, so I picked up Profit First, and while I was reading it, I was like, oh man, this is exactly how I think about numbers. I had kind of experienced the same thing at my first construction company when that first tax bill came. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
what? Wait, what? How much money do I owe? Where's this going to come from? And then after a awkward discussion with my CPA, I just said, okay, I'm going to set some money aside because I don't
Mm-hmm.
ever want. And anyway, so and then the next year I had enough money to pay the bill, but this was before Profit First. I was scared, right? Anyway, when I read Profit First, I was like, oh, this is what I've been doing. It's basically like the Dave Ramsey, envelope system for businesses, right? So anyway, when I read Profit First, and by this time I was a business coach, and I was like, this is how I teach my clients to think about or how to view their money, but it's better packaged, it's better formatted. And then, so I reached out to Mike's organization because being a business coach, I was like, I want to teach this, and he offers this certification in it. So again,
Mm-hmm.
being a business coach, I'm a sucker for other business coaches. So I signed up for his program to become certified because I wanted to be
Mm-hmm.
able to leverage the name and all of that. Anyway, so a few weeks into my certification process, I'm talking to my coach as he's taking me through the certification, and I just happened to mention, I said Mike should write a book for contractors. You'd have to
Mm-hmm.
change the language because the way subcontractors and materials are something very different for a construction company than they are general business. And my coach said, "Well, why don't you write the book?" And I was like, what do you mean?" He was like, "Mike will
Yeah.
sell you a license, it's called a derivative license. He'll sell you a license, and you can develop." And there were some other people that had those in the works. Like I think there was one for e-commerce, for
Mm-hmm.
lawyers, for dentists. Anyway, those were kind of already in the works. So again, I just happened to make a comment about the construction version, and then 2 weeks later, I'm on a Zoom call with Mike McAllowitz, who I'm a big fanboy of
Yeah.
for years. I couldn't believe it, and then 45 minutes later, I'm walking out of my office, and I told my wife, I was like, I I think I got a book deal. And she was like, what book? And I was like, Profit First for Contractors. And she was like, is that legal? I was like, I don't know, but Mike said I could do it. So yeah, he helped me put the framework together, but he was like, the power of Profit First is that it works. If you
Mm-hmm.
put it in and speak directly to your audience, telling them stories about what they can relate to, the
Mm-hmm.
system is the same because
Yep.
the math of business doesn't change. It's just how it applies to different types of businesses. So I kind of went all in there and said, all right, I'll tell every good and bad story and all the mistakes that I made. And, and the math just kind of sits underneath that. So
Yeah,
that's
and
kind of how the book came about.
one of my favorite, I guess, analogies used in the book is that, profit first is more of, the sunglasses or whatever, but for contractors, these are the polarized lenses that helps you see deeper into specific scenarios that these contractors, even listening to this podcast, are going through. But it's the same system. It really is simple. It's not easy, but it's a simple system that can be applied to many industries, but having the specific vocabulary in there really gets specific in the book.
Yeah, and I think that's the power of Profit First in general. I'm not even speaking of the contractor version,
Mm-hmm.
but it is so simple. And what I find is when people come across it, two things happen. They're like, "This is too simple. It must be a gimmick." So
Yeah.
they don't buy into it. Or a lot of times, and this is what we help coach people through, is they do see how simple it is. It is very clarifying, and for a lot of business owners, for the first time, they have a deeper understanding of cash flow and finances. And they make the mistake of going to the end of the book, meaning
Mm.
like, oh, here's what my percentages needs to be. I need to have these bank accounts. And so they'll read the book, and I get these emails all the time where they're asking me, well, we did the stuff in the book, but we're having to go back in and pull money out. And I say, hey, what? was like, don't worry about the end where I mean, eventually you have to crunch the numbers and you want to dial it in.
Hmm.
I said, just start with 1%. Just,
Yep.
like we say in the very beginning of the book, whatever your bank balance is now, take 1%, put it in another bank account, don't touch it. And then for the next 3 months, don't even worry about profit first. Just think 1%. You're not going to miss
Hmm.
it. So basically every payment that you get, take 1%, stick that in the account. That starts the habit, right? And then you can worry about crunching the numbers. The reason that where people kind of jump all the way in, they're like, oh, 10%, that's what I need. That's what I want. And so they'll take the money they have now. They may grab 10% of that or 10% of the next money that's coming in. And I always describe to them, I'm like, hold on. Those dollars that are coming in today started 6 months ago.
Hmm.
Those dollars don't have, you weren't even aware of cash flow or profits or markup or margin. The dollars that you're seeing today don't have 10% in there, right?
Right.
So, but do they have 1% or 2%? Absolutely. That's where I tell people to start.
Does that kind of eliminate the excuse of doing it, right? Where you just do 1%? Like anyone, if you have a $10,000 deposit, anyone can find 1% of that and still operate on the money that they received. Is it kind of just destroying the excuse of starting?
Yeah, I would say it's so simple, it's impossible not to do.
Hmm.
So and I get again people all the time, they reach out and they're like, love the book. And I'm like, cool. Have you done the first step?
Yeah.
No, no, not yet. Okay.
Yeah.
And even, I mean, the book's been out for, I don't know, 8 years, 9 years now. And so it's even easier. I'm like, now you can just log into your bank, create the bank account, transfer it out. Like you can do it on your phone,
Yeah.
right? In the book, we talk, and I actually should probably update the book a little bit, saying go down to the bank, log into your phone, create another
Yeah.
bank account. But then everybody's like, well, what about the fees in my bank? And then I'm like, you're looking for a way to, it's not that difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this. And what we're going to do for everyone listening is we're going to dive in a bit further into what the profit first system is and just kind of lay it out for you guys. But what I recommend is definitely buy Shawn's book. You can find it on Amazon. It's just this profit first for contractors. We've talked about it on the show before. So read the book in conjunction with listening to what Shawn's saying here. And Shawn, before diving into really what profit first is and how people can get started, I want to ask you a question because I think even in the book, you talk about this is one of the most important issues in the construction industry. Talk to me a little bit about the difference between markup and margin, because this is obviously something that is so interchangeable in some people's minds. And even as I'm reading it, it gave me clarity, right? And I was like, okay, this makes so much more sense. So if you don't mind doing a little bit of a deep dive here into markup versus margin and what's the big difference?
Sure. Yeah. And so I'll ask your listeners, take a second, grab a scrap sheet of paper and a pen because you'll want to write this down because you'll need to see this. But in general, the reason I think that this is so important is I don't like the words markup and margin, or people get them confused because they're both financial terms. They
Mm-hmm.
both apply to how you make money in any business, in construction, and also they're kind of spelled the same, right? So a lot of people think that they're the same thing. So we'll run through this, and what I say is markup is the amount of money you add to your cost to get to your price. So something, and we'll use this as something cost me $100, whatever that is, labor, material, so whatever. I spent $100 on this thing. That's what it cost me. If I mark it up by 50% or add $50, so I'm taking $100 times 50% is $50. I'm going to mark that up by 50% or multiply times 1.5. That's a markup because that gives me a price I'm going to sell that $100 thing for 150, right? So markup is the amount I add to my cost to get my price. Now I spent $100 on a thing and I sold it for 150. The difference between what I paid for something and what I sold it for creates margin. Now, the thing about, so margin is the space that's created between your cost and your price. And this is where a lot of people get confused. And I talk about this in the book. I call it the $100 example. So I'm going to dial this back down to, because most contractors, they believe that a 20% markup or 20% margin, again, they're interchanging the words and using them incorrectly, is all you can charge. So I'm going to use that as the example. So something cost me $100. I mark it up by 20% or add $20, and I sell it for $120. That's my price. Okay, this is where people usually get confused. And when I say, okay, so I marked it up by 20%, I added $20, and now I'm selling the thing for $120. Then what's my gross profit in general? What's my gross profit on that thing? Oh, $20. So the space that's created is the margin, $20. And here's the mistake that people say. They're like, oh, I marked it up by 20%. I sold it for $120. I paid $100 for it. So the $20 I made divided by the $100 it cost me equals 20%. And that is what would be wrong. And the reason is you don't sell your cost, you sell your price. So a 20% markup, we start with 100. So everybody write this down, $100 times 1.2, where we're adding 20% markup equals $120. Now my margin that was created was $20. And when I'm talking about that in percentages, I take the $20 of profit and divide by $120 my price. That gives me 16.67% margin. So a 20% markup produces a 16.7% margin. And if you don't get that, let's say that your business requires 20% margin. That's what it requires. Let's say you crunch the number. And if you mark up your cost by 20%, you're going to be losing 3.3%. And the numbers get worse if you require a higher margin. So for example, a 50% markup produces a 33% margin. So if you need a 33% margin in your business and you mark something up by 33%, you're going to be losing like 8% or whatever it is. So the way that I tell people the $100 example, the way to figure it out to make it really simple to think, what is my margin for a certain markup? So in that $100 example, we use 20% divided by 120. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
$20 is our margin divided by 120. And so the numbers get really easy to say, okay, well, what's a 30% markup produce? 30 divided by 130. What's a 40% markup? 40 divided by 140. 50 divided by 150. Does that make sense? Like that's the way to think about it. What does that now? A lot of people they don't necessarily confuse it. You can get to the same number because it's just math. I like to add markup. That's just how I think, because a lot of business owners, in their mind, that's how they estimate. You know how much something costs, and if I can quickly add 50% or even 100% or 25% to it in my head. So I'm usually working from a cost because we're buying stuff all the time. Now, you can get to the same number by starting on the other side of the equation and saying, if I want to produce a certain margin, what should my markup be? The math is the same. It's like, am I working left to right or right to left? So you'll hear a lot of people out there talk about, oh no, you gotta work off margin. You gotta work off margin. And I'm just like, yeah, it's the same. Yeah. It's the same math, right? Where are you starting at? And in general, like most of your listeners out there, when someone calls them up, let's just say I know you got some big dirt companies out there, but let's say, someone calls you up and they need a supervisor and a guy on a piece of equipment for a 3-day job. Man, they just know in the back of their head what their daily rate is, what their equipment charge at cost, right? They can do that, and they're adding markup. And before they say, "Oh yeah, 3-day job," and I'm just making this number up. Yeah, that's going to be $8,000 to do that. the price comes out because they probably know, yeah, I got about 6,000 or like yeah, $5,000 in cost times 50% would be 7,500.
Hmm.
I better throw a little extra in there, so I'm going to say 8,000. In general, I find most business owners in construction, they kind of start with the cost side of that. So cost times markup gives me my prices a little bit easier. But
Yeah.
that's the difference.
And for everyone listening too, as we're going through this, and I hope you're all writing this down, there's also this incredible margin and markup table that Shawn put in the book. It's on page 55. It literally shows you what the markup factor is and what margin percent that is. And so you kind of just go through, and Shawn, maybe if you don't mind touching just a little bit more on that, like if somebody newer is listening and they don't know how much they should be marking up, how would they find that number in their industry?
Um, well, that's a good question. I would say this in general,
Hmm.
in business in general. If it costs me $1, I'm charging $1.50 for it. I go with a 50% markup on everything, minimum.
Hmm.
Minimum. So a lot of but if you talk to enough people, they will say, oh, we can't charge more than 20%, or especially like home builders, for example, oh, we're cost plus 15%. That's all garbage. It's all garbage because in that a 15% markup gives you about a 12% margin,
Yeah.
and you have to be running a super duper lean company to be around 10 or 11% just in operating expenses. So when I hear people, oh, we're cost plus 15%, or we only mark up by 20%, I'm like, how much does it cost to run your business in
Yeah.
percentage? They don't know. So in general, especially for the new guys starting out, you got to know, you got to figure out what your costs are. That takes a while, but I promise you, if you'll just, whatever number you're using now, mark it up by 50%. That's the number you need, because 2 years down the road, when you realize, oh, this is much more expensive, the
Hmm.
math of a 50% markup is going to give you 33%.
Right.
I want 10 or 13% as net profit. It gives me another 20% to run the business. So let's just say in that example, if you're using a 50% markup, and some guys are going to be looking at that, doing the math and going, there's no way I can charge that. I'm like,
Yeah.
you have to charge that. Trust me, because the number you're using right now is not nearly as developed. You don't even realize how expensive it is to run a business. So
Mm.
you might on paper be producing a 33% margin. Don't worry, you'll never see that in your business. You'll make too many mistakes. There's too many unknowns. We're dealing with weather and delays, and let's just admit it, some pretty crappy customers that are going to bleed profits out of you. So I want to
Mm.
shoot for a 33% margin. So maybe in the next few years, I can keep around a 20% to 25%. Does that make sense? So
Makes so much sense. And then as you guys are listening, that 50% markup gets you to that 33% margin. And that's what Shawn is saying there.
yeah, and so the other thing that I talk about is, well, what people all the time will misuse the word profit. And
Hmm.
in the purest sense of the word, profit, after all of the bills have been paid for, there's no one else asking you for any money. That's the money. And again, this is anti-profit first. That's the money that's left over. Like people say, oh, we made a good profit on that particular job, but we don't have it because we had to pay,
Mm.
our office. We had to pay for cell phones. We had to pay for fuel. I'm like, then that ain't profit, dude. It's
Yeah.
gross profit, right? But we've got to run, we've got to run a business. And so all that says, why do I focus so much on margin? So in
Hmm.
that 50% markup creates a 33% margin. Margin goes to pay for the two other bills in your business: the expenses to run the business and the profit that you deserve. Now, most companies aren't making a profit, right? But that's the biggest problem, right? So when I say you got to produce a 33% margin, it's just
Hmm.
in general, I want to slot 20%, right? So if you break it down and say, like, let's just say $1 is your, revenue, right? 67% is going to go to my cost of goods sold. So I have 33% left over. 20 cents of that dollar is going to run the business, and 10 to 13% is going to be my profit.
Right.
And the reason I want to shoot for a 10 to 13% profit, because all of the stuff that's going to come up and the unknown, if I'm pushing for a 10, 13, 15% profit with the way that I calculate it. And
Hmm.
then by the time the money comes in, the universe is going to chip away at that, right? So I'm shooting for 15, we land at 10, whew, I'm good. A lot of people think they're shooting for 10, they haven't calculated. There's no, like when you break it down, it's like you're never going to make more than 5 if you do
Mm.
well, and the universe is going to smack you. So now you're at 0 or negative, and that's people are like, I don't. Where's all the money going?
All right, you dirtbags. I want to take one quick second, maybe a couple more, to thank our three wonderful sponsors all at once. So we just do one ad read. And thank you guys for listening to the show. But huge shout out to our three sponsors. You've heard me talk about them many times before. Um, Charlie Huff, the insurance legend when it comes to construction companies. Shoot him a text if you're looking to just compare prices, if you want a free quote, or if you want to just switch over to him because he knows the industry. His cell number, 435-764-4833. That's our guy, Charlie Huff. So many of you guys listening use him. We even use him for our company at Phaser, and he's just a man for the people. So shoot him a text. Of course, let him know you heard him on the Dirtbags podcast. It's always nice to get credit, and for him to, he always shoots me a text with a screenshot and just says, thanks for sending you guys over. But 435-764-4833. Charlie is the man. Massive shout out, of course, to Eljen Corporation. Eljen has been supporting the Dirtbags podcast for a while now. You can check them out on Instagram at Eljen Corporation, or learn more about what they do on their website, eljen.com. Eljen's been supporting us, but also they support our veterans of this wonderful country, and they help place veterans, U.S. veterans into the workplace. And we had that episode, I believe it was episode 94, the 4th of July special with Drew Nicolai, to talk more about Eljen and what they do for the industry, the wastewater, the septic industry, but also what they do for our country. And it is just, we're so honored to get to work with them and so thankful. So reach out to Eljen at Eljen Corporation on Instagram or eljen.com to see if their products are right for you. And finally, huge shout out to our team over at Sledgehammer. This is everyone, Will, Dr. Wickham, the whole team over there has just been absolutely incredible. Sledgehammer, you can go check out their new fancy website, sledgehammer.net. They have all their information on there of how you can become a network partner with them and use their products to have a whole new revenue stream, but also to take care of your clients even better when it comes to advanced septic solutions. So go check them out, sledgehammer.net, or of course, give them a follow on their Instagram at Sledgehammer Group Ltd. Let them know you heard them on the Dirtbags podcast. That is all that we have for our ad reads today. Thank you guys for listening to the show as well. So let's get right back to the episode. Let's get right back into it.
And I'm like, it's because you're not generating that margin. That margin has got to be created to run the business, to grow the business, and to produce a profit.
Yeah, this is so good, Shawn. And it's not theory. Like, you get to talk to so many construction companies that do it and that have this margin and do it properly and are running on profit first. And I don't want to say do it properly, but are running on this system and are making it happen. So these numbers you're giving, like you said, for everyone listening, this is in general. Like, we're not talking about earthwork versus landscaping. Like, this is in general, but just the system of it. And Shawn, I want to tee you up for this next conversation of talking about the actual system. So typically revenue minus expenses equals profit, right? How have you guys shifted that and changed the mindset of business to make sure that we can last for 10, 20 years and are taking profit first?
Yeah. So what you're talking about there is basically the basic mathematical formula for everything on the business side, right? Revenue or sales, as we say, sales comes in, dollars come in. Then we go and run the business. We buy stuff. We run the business. Money goes out, and then we just say, "Oh, well, whatever is left over, that's our profit." And so, with a profit first system, we're not we're not changing math because the math is essentially the same. We're just making a slight adjustment in the equation because sales minus profit, we're going to deal with profit first. The reason that you are in business, because if you're not making any profit, then you're running a charity, right? So we want to set some money aside. And then what we have left over is the money to run the business. And in that simple little shift in the equation where we go from sales minus expenses and profit is left over to sales, set our profit aside minus profit, and then we run the business off of what's left. If we don't have enough money to run the business off of what's left, you don't steal it from the profit. You go change the way that you operate the business. And what works for all of your accounting, bookkeeping, and financial stuff, sales minus expenses equals profit. We're not changing that, but we are shifting the mindset because sales minus profit equals expenses is actually how we behave as normal human beings. So I always use this example too, and I'll put you on the spot here, Luke.
Yeah, let's do it.
I can prove that profit first is how every normal human being operates. So, and I can tell that by what you did in the bathroom this morning. So, yeah, exactly. All right.
All right.
So did you brush your teeth this morning?
Yes.
Okay. Think about brushing your teeth every morning. What happens when you run out of toothpaste?
I would go either steal my wife's toothpaste or go buy some more.
Okay, that's a lie. You actually wouldn't do that. And here's why, right? Before you go steal your wife's or before you go buy some more, I find that there are three types of people in this world.
Okay.
Number one, there's the rollers. So you take the tube of toothpaste, you roll it up, push your thumbs, and you get that little bit more, right? Person number two are what I call the ironers. I'm an ironer. So you use the edge of the countertop, you smash it down, you take your toothbrush and you iron it out and you get that little bit more. And then I say the third person is like the MacGyvers. I usually have a pocket knife on me, right? So I've been known to cut the top of the toothpaste tube off and then get it,
Dip
right?
it in.
So now you're thinking about it. It's like, wait, before you go steal your wife's or before you get something more, you're squeezing a little bit out somehow. Would that be a correct statement?
Absolutely.
And everybody does it. So what's happening here psychologically, there's a name for it. It's called Parkinson's law or the law of induced demand. What Parkinson's law says is that the demand grows to meet the available supply. So I'll say that again. The demand for something grows to meet the available supply. When you have a full tube of toothpaste, tomorrow morning you're not gonna not be able to think about this.
Yeah.
You got a full tube of toothpaste, you're just gonna squeeze and go, right? And you're gonna continue that behavior until one day you run out. And before you steal your wife's, you'll spend a couple of days squeezing, smashing, cutting open. And you're going to get a little bit of toothpaste out of there. And that little bit that you get is just enough to get by for the day. And then you go on, right? And then when you get that full tube, you're back to overusing. Because if you can use a little bit and get by, that's actually the amount that you should use every day. But why don't we do that? Because when we have a full tube of toothpaste, we demand more of it. We demand more of that supply. Does that make sense? So the same thing in the bank account. When all that money is sitting in one bank account and it comes in and we get that $50,000 invoice, we see it, we just emotionally react to it. That's a full tube of toothpaste. Oh, great. I can pay some bills. I can go buy some more stuff. I can grow the company. Even though that you got a full tube of toothpaste, you're going to squeeze it out. And then when the bank account gets low, then you start behaving differently, right? You figure out, you start calling up people and saying, hey, where are those invoice payments? We need to cut back. We need to put in a spending freeze. We need to get rid of some of these subscriptions and quit going out to, quit buying Starbucks and Subway on the business credit card because we don't have any money, right? You behave differently. So that's why That's the key to profit first. It's not we're not changing the math. It's really about human behavior. So when the money comes in, we want to artificially, I just say artificially, we want to systematically
Mm,
create small tubes of toothpaste that serve the business. So we don't think of, $100,000 week as $100,000 week, because when it comes in and we split it up, we see, oh, there's some operation money. That's good. I can make payroll next week. Got a little bit over here for profit. Tax bills coming too. So that $100,000 isn't $100,000 week. And
right.
if you've had a zero week the week before, the tubes of toothpaste were empty last week. So you don't look at that. It just changes the way you behave towards your money.
I love it. And so, practically speaking, you mentioned 5 accounts. So, we're setting up 5 accounts, and then all the money is dropping into one account first. And then it sounds like it's transferring to these other accounts on a systematic basis.
Yeah. So in general, most people have at least one, maybe two bank accounts. So
Hmm.
when people hear that, like, oh, I got to go set up 5 bank accounts. No, you probably have one or two. We
Yep.
just say that the 5 bank accounts are the 5 foundational bank accounts. So they're what we call them is the income, profit, tax, owner's comp, meaning
Hmm.
owner's compensation, and then operating expenses or OPEX. So most people, when they start, we get this question all the time: is most likely one or two of your bank accounts is functioning, even though money may be coming in and going out, and you're paying all of your bills. It's probably functioning as your operational account. Right.
Hmm.
And so what I always say is, besides the step number one, go set up a profit account. If you do nothing else, I don't care if you have one, two bank accounts or whatever, is go set up another account, call it profit, and go put 1% of whatever your bank balance is, go put it in that account and don't touch it. Like, and that for months could serve, hey, we have our main bank accounts and then we set up this profit account. We're putting some money over there. That's great. But traditionally what we want to do is say, okay, eventually that next account is probably the income account. So we're going to say now here's the practical the practical use of this is, especially with everything being online and that kind of stuff,
Yep.
you have a bank account where all the money is coming into now, and you're also probably paying your bills out of that. So you go and set the income account up, and then over time, over the next few weeks, you can do it in one fell swoop if you want. It just takes a little bit of time. We need to go reroute when our invoices are paid. They don't come into, let's just call it existing bank account. We need to route that money to the income account. So you're going to
Hmm.
slowly, when I say slowly do that, you could do it over a series of weeks or a couple of months, right? And then saying, okay, now we have all of the money coming into our income account. We're going to pay bills out of our OPEX account. That's probably the existing bank account that you have, right now, especially if they're already set up with vendors and subs and all of that kind
Yep.
of stuff. So that's the practical use. We talk income, profit, tax, owner's comp, and OPEX. But practically, most people kind of already have their OPEX. I say go set up the profit,
Hmm.
then go to income, and then just kind of massage the system. But here's how: once you have it set up, here's basically how it works. So money now comes in to the income account. Then every couple of weeks is you go into the income account and you zero it out, meaning you're going to take all the money that's come in and you're going to allocate that to the other four accounts: profit, tax, owner's comp, and OPEX. So when people say, oh, the bank account goes to zero, depending on how your bank account is, you might leave $1,000 in there to avoid some fees or whatever, right? But just think
Hmm.
about, money is coming in, we're taking it down to essentially zero, and every couple of weeks. Now that's another sticking point for a lot of people. They say, well, I need to transfer money more often than that. I got to pay bill. Okay, do transfer it as often as you need to at the beginning. But once you start working with the profit first system, you're going to start seeing, oh, I don't have to pay bills. Like cash flow is increasing. You'll eventually get to the point where we drop into the income account and clear it out every couple of weeks. And when we first started, we were almost in there daily because
Hmm.
money was so tight. But that's the idea. The income account just holds all the money. And the reason that is so that when you go in, let's say in 2 weeks from now, let's say you've zeroed out your bank account, and let's say in the last 2 week period or whatever, you dropped in the income account was $50,000. A couple more weeks comes by. Now you're dropping into your income account to do your allocations and
Mm-hmm.
disperse it. And you're like, wait a minute, there's only $25,000 in here. It's a simple way because you can remember what it was 2 weeks ago. You're not going to remember what your profit and loss statement said 6 months ago, but you'll know, like, wait a minute, I had $50,000 the previous 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
It's only $25,000. And we always say, like, when the money is lower in that 2 week time period, you'll remember it and you just say, what did I do differently? I need to go fix something. Then you go fix it. And then the next 2 week period, it's like, oh, $60,000. Oh, okay. What did we do to increase the money that came into the business? And when you figure out what that is, then you replicate it. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the purpose of that income account. We're just dropping in there every 2 weeks. It's giving us very high level information about the cash flow and the money coming in. And we're just saying, hey, is there something I need to fix to get money coming in? Or is there something I'm doing right and I need to replicate? And then you just kind of put that on repeat. Then you crunch the numbers and we say, we're going to serve the business first. You're going to take some percentage and put it into the profit account. And again,
Mm-hmm.
for most people listening, if they're just starting it, 1%, put it in the
Mm-hmm.
profit account and just do that for the next 3 months. Now, when you make a profit, you will pay taxes on it. So you might as well set up a tax account too. Put 1% there. And this is what people pay me thousands of dollars to coach them for it. So I'm just telling you for free, this is exactly
Let's
where it
go.
all starts, right? So 1% into profit, 1% into tax. And people will say, well, Shawn, but that's not sustainable. And I'm like, no, but neither is your business right now. But in
Mm-hmm.
6 months, a year, 18 months, everything's going to be different, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just 1% profit, 1% into tax. All right, now we've spent 2%. We've got another 98% to spend. I would say, depending on what you're paying yourself, your salary or draws, or whatever that is, I'd say you want probably somewhere 8 to 10%. Now, for
Mm-hmm.
smaller companies that are starting out, the percentages are going to be way higher. So but like you'd said, if you're $1 million to $10 million, especially $10 to $50 million, then the math is all the same. But in general, I want to shoot for about a 10% owner's
Mm-hmm.
compensation. So now
Yeah.
we have 1% going to profit, 1%. Let's just keep it simple: 1% going to profit, 1% going to tax, and 8% going into my owner's comp
Sure.
account. All right, I've just spent 10% of the money that has come into the business. All right. So 90% goes into OpEx. That's it. That's all the money you have is 100% of the revenue that comes in. And then just do that for 3 months and see if you miss that
Mm-hmm.
1% into profit and 1% into tax. And if you don't, good. Then for the next 3 months, bump it up 2% into profit, 2% into tax. Okay. Now where's that money going to come? It has to come from somewhere. You're going to cut your operating percentage down
Mm-hmm.
to, was it 2, so that's 4, 8, 12. You're gonna drop that down to 98% or whatever the math is. Now I'm trying to do math in my head, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then run with that. Again, 2% profit, 2% tax, not sustainable.
Right.
But we're just 6 months into this thing. And then the next 3 months, and you don't have to run a financial report to do any of this stuff. But once you start seeing, like, oh, I don't need, like, there's some money sitting over there and I'm not touching it. It's going to start to pile up.
Mm-hmm.
And then people get really excited. Then they'll say, well, I did 2%. And then they'll jump profit. I'm going to jump my profit up to 6% or
Yeah.
whatever. That's when they run out of money or things get really tight in the OpEx. So if we went 1% for 3 months, then 2%, and then we jump to 5%, and
Mm-hmm.
now OpEx gets really tight or cash flow really starts to tight. Your business just told you you don't have that much. So I would dial it back to 3% and then go figure out, okay, now I'm 9 months into it. Now I should be estimating clearer, charging more. I should know more, like what things are actually
Mm-hmm.
costing me. But again, some people, they never dig into the numbers. They
Mm-hmm.
just keep using the bank account. Now, I recommend you got to eventually get analytical with the numbers, but we're talking the first nine months. This sounds really big. You almost don't have to do anything. Your business is going to show you whether you got money to operate or not.
Yeah.
And if you're
Yeah.
not
And
paying yourself, and again, you will come up with excuses. Oh, I'm investing back in my company.
yeah.
No, you're not. You're running a charity, and your spouse probably hates that.
Yeah. And Shawn, I love that you brought that up because I want to settle on that just for a second here is so often, and this is probably happening to business owners listening, the business owner isn't paying themselves a salary for the work that they do. And you mentioned in the book too, you're like, try doing that to one of your employees and see how long they last. But why is that such a thing where we almost make this excuse of we're investing back in the business, we're investing back in the business, and then the owner is never paying himself as if he were replaced for the work that he or she is doing. So, what are your thoughts on that? And then, side question to that on owner's comp, how would you recommend doing it as your business grows? Like, would you recommend setting a set salary and then letting that account grow, or how would you typically do that owner's comp account?
Yeah. So to the first question, I think the answer is why do the business owners do that? And again, I'm not slamming on anybody here, but it is out of fear and scarcity.
Mm,
Because when you start a business, especially if you've never started a business before, or you don't have you're not starting it with capital, all you have is your sweat equity.
yeah.
All you have, right? And but then you start getting, you can't believe that people actually are going to send you money for doing the thing that you love to do. And again, early on, the reason those people are sending you so much money is because you aren't charging nearly enough. That's why you're so busy,
Mm,
right? But you stay busy, the money's coming in, it's going out, but there's never enough to pay you. Like if you went out and got a job running the equipment, doing with all of your expertise, and but everybody says, oh, I want freedom. Great. And then they end up working 12-hour a day, 12 days, 12-hour days, seven days a week. I'm like, how's that freedom thing going for you? The easiest
yeah.
way to get freedom is to figure out how much you can charge somebody and start paying yourself. But that's where it starts out. But then it gets really scary because as you get more work and you start to grow, the biggest thing is I cannot pay myself as the owner, and I'm still going to show up to work tomorrow.
Yeah.
And without someone holding you accountable to that, unfortunately, it's a very easy way to exist in business.
Mm,
And you talk to enough other business owners, you'll hear the same thing. Oh, yeah, we're making a living, which is totally fine. But if something happened to the owner, typically, between year 3 to year 5, that's where it really starts to hit to say, like, you're probably doing the work of 2 to 3 people. And
hmm
if something happened to you, your spouse, your partner, whatever, could not step into the business and hire 3 people for what you're paying yourself.
Right. And
So how do you get there?
And it's almost like you talk about Parkinson's law, and like, this is what it is, right? It's the fish, the goldfish growing in the fish bowl. Like if we allow myself to work 3 jobs as the owner, or as, and I think a great way you mentioned too is like you have to look at it from an owner and an employee. An owner is separate from the work that you do at your company. And so if you are doing 3 different jobs at your company, you need to pay yourself for those 3 different jobs so that if you do pass away or if something happens or somebody needs to step in, you're not giving yourself false numbers on your
Yeah.
P&L and in your bank account. So I think what I'm hearing you say, Shawn, here too, is for people listening is, hey, no matter what, if you can't pay yourself anything, there's something else wrong. You're either not charging enough or you're spending too much. And we have to fix that now. So setting that reasonable wage for the work that you're doing so that you can fix wherever the leak is in your company.
Yeah, and most people, it's actually pretty simple. Most people don't charge enough for what it costs them. When I just
Mm-hmm.
say cost them to run a business. And the other mistake that owners, operators will will have is when if they start crunching the number. Again, this is where we're going to let math dictate what you need to do in your business, not ego. But I
Yep.
talk to a lot of business owners. I'm like, yeah, let's talk about all the 17 different jobs you're doing. Okay, you're an estimator, you're sales, you're doing project management, and you own the company, you're, CEO. I'm like, okay, cool. And then we break that down, and I'm like, so you're like, you're a super nerd for spreadsheets, automations, and you're like, no, 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 I hate estimating. Oh, okay. And then on the sales side, like you're charging, pre-construction, and you know how to sell value, and you know how to drive upgrades and all of it. No, I really hate sales. I'm not that good of a salesman. I'm not confident. But then we say, but project management, you out in the field, coordinating with subs, with superintendents, with architect, whatever the technicals. Oh yeah, and that's actually their sweet spot. I'm like, okay,
Mm.
so you admitted you suck at estimating. You don't really like sales either. So when we're calculating the value of the three different jobs that you do, you're not a $90,000 a year estimator.
Mm.
If you came in to interview you for an estimator, you wouldn't hire yourself.
Yeah.
So don't value the 40 hour or the 20 hours a week you spend estimating at a $90,000 rate. That's what you'll have to pay somebody who's qualified. But no offense, you're not a very good estimator.
Mm.
You might be a $15 an hour estimator, given the fact that you don't like computers, you don't like a spreadsheet, and you don't like automations or whatever. Now, you're still the only one that can do it, but let's value that time to show you, like, this is why you need to get a $90,000 a year estimator in there,
Yep.
because you're doing $15 an hour estimating garbage, right?
Hmm.
That's why your profits are leaking. That's why, you know what I'm saying? So,
Yep.
so you can't just say, well, I'm doing three different jobs, I should pay myself 200 grand. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
look at the market value of those skills, right?
Yeah. And
That's
is it,
where the math works out. Because I've had guys go, well, I'd have to be a $20 million company to pay me the
mm,
$300,000 in salary. And I'll be like, let's admit it, you're kind of a crappy estimator, and you know it.
yeah.
You would fire yourself as an estimator, so don't value yourself as that. Now, you're probably a $250,000 project manager, field superintendent, and maybe visionary, CEO. There's
Hmm.
definitely value there, but like, get the estimator in, pay them what they're worth, and business will take off.
Yeah, I love that. And Shawn, I want to make sure that we touch on this as well. But so you talked about the 5 accounts, how it works. Before we wrap up, I would just like to hear maybe some examples of companies like where it has worked out after they've implemented the system, maybe in terms of taxes or paying their team. And if you can mention anything on there, like as they grow too, because as you figure out your capacity, how you can hire, who you can hire, would like to hear any like personal stories you have with that and companies you've worked with. And then of course, for our listeners too, would love to hear how they can reach out to you, how they can get in touch with you or any of your services. And then of course, buy the book on Amazon, Profit
Yeah.
First for Contractors.
Yeah, I think as we're recording this episode towards
Mm-hmm.
the beginning of the second quarter of the year, this is the time of year where I start getting a lot of the tax emails. I just got
Yeah.
one today, and we were talking about it right before we started recording. Guy reached out. He'd been doing Profit First for 4 years now, and he said he had a $50,000 tax bill. Not only the taxes that he owed for the previous year, but also that first quarterly payment. And he said, as
Mm-hmm.
much as I hate writing checks for that big amount, it's sitting in a bank account, and it's never been easier. And I told him, I was like, congratulations to pay a $50,000 tax bill, which was just part of the taxes so
Right.
I can only imagine what the total tax bill was for the year. I said, the only reason you're paying taxes is because you were profitable. So
Mm-hmm.
so not only is something you're profitable, but you've got the money. All right, man. Hallelujah. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's make this year even better. And that's what I tell people. Hey, if you, whatever you did to set that money aside, if you're going to have an even better year, you're going to be even more profitable, or maybe you're going to run a tighter and leaner ship, guess what?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to pay more in taxes. So
That's how it works.
tweak that percentage just a little bit, and then get back to running your business. So this time of year, I get a lot of those. I can't believe it actually worked. We were able to write the check, and everybody says the same thing. We don't like writing the check,
Yeah.
but we're able to do that. And then I think for a lot of the other companies that we work with, it is just literally seeing like how much room there is in the existing, like we had talked about before, the existing dollars in their business.
Hmm.
And I'm just convincing them to say like just 1% for the next couple of months, then bump it up by another couple of percentage. And when you're starting something like this, then we always hear the same thing is like it's a weekly
Yeah.
sort of grind. But I asked people, I was like, how long have you been in business? 5 years, 7 years. What's the goal? Like,
Hmm.
some people say they want to sell their business, but a lot of them are like, man, this is what I want to do for 20, 30 years, whatever. I was like, then the next 18 months are a blink of the eye and it's going to
Yeah.
change everything. Day to day, it's going to be disciplined, but you're going to look back. And so I would challenge all of your listeners to think now, if you're brand new, just starting out, you're, under 3 years in business, there's never a better time to start right now and
Yep.
talk to those other guys that are in your group or that you're in a community with, and they will tell you, I wish I had profit first when I was. You're going to be so much further ahead than people are, even when the numbers are, even the numbers are really small. One of the other stories I'll tell you real quick, real life story, contractor I was working with, we ran through the numbers when all of the dust settled. They thought they were making money. And we said, hey, you are making some money. And they had a
Hmm.
$2 profit. Like that's what we actually calculated. $2 when
Oh,
everything was, and again, owner's comp and all of that kind of stuff. You made $2. 18 months later, they had $118,000 in their profit account. So from
wow.
118, and they didn't do anything magical. They probably
Hmm.
started charging more, but once you start realizing, like, holy crap, we're doing all this work for $2 profit,
Hmm.
it's motivating to stand in front of that customer that says, no, can you give me a deal? Oh,
Hmm.
you're too expensive. And you're just like, no, at this rate, we're making a $2 profit over a couple $1 million in revenue, point
Yeah.
zero 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 0.00001%, whatever that is. It's just easier to stand in front of the customer and be like, no, we're not too expensive. We're
Yeah.
exactly where we need to be. And then you either don't work for customers that you're never going to make a profit at, or they just come alongside. What's there, especially for excavators?
Yeah.
I've got 5 kids, 4 of them boys, and I was like, you let me know. I will figure out. I will buy you your first skid steer, or I will invest in that because I've got a buddy of mine that he has an excavation company, and his 9-year-old, 12-year-old, 15-year-olds are out here doing work on our property, and I'm like, those
Yeah.
guys are going to be millionaires because
Yeah.
you you get to they're not making folks to jump in. I mean, maybe I think the tide is going to turn, but anyway, I'm just saying, guys that and gals that are listening out there, charge whatever you want, man. If you know your numbers, like you don't have to take every job. Just work on the profitable ones. And even if you're starting out now, just setting that 1%, you're gonna in 18 months to 2 years, the finances are going to be so much more clear.
Yeah. And Shawn, that's the biggest thing too. And you just mentioned it is knowing your numbers. When you know your numbers, you have clarity. Clarity kills fear. You can take probably 2 seconds to look at somebody's profit first account and see how their business is just from a scorecard metric or a health standpoint, and take a look at their target allocation percentages and just see like, where are we at here? But it takes seconds to take a look 18 months from now. But that first step starts today. And that starts with going in, setting up the accounts. And as you guys listening, read the book, I can't remember what chapter it is, but you say you can't read on until you've done step one.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so you point that out so perfectly. And yeah, Shawn, I just appreciate you being on the show. I know you're super active on your Instagram at Shawn Van Dyke. And any other places that people can follow you and take a look at your stuff?
Yeah, if you should be able to Google Shawn Van Dyke, and that's
Mm-hmm.
SHAWN Van Dyke. All my stuff should pop up, which means I get kudos to my SEO folks
Let's go.
so there's that. I got the website on Instagram, and again, I don't have a big team on, there's no marketing agency behind me. So if you're sending me a DM and you get a response, other than, we have a few auto responders, but yeah, it's me checking those messages. And then we also this whole profit first stuff, once we got people through like the initial, like here's how the cash flow works, now setting it up, we kind of stumbled our way into starting a bookkeeping agency. So we also do profit for, well, I should say we do full on bookkeeping, job costing, systems integration for construction business owners. And people will often, when they reach out to me, they were like, oh, so you do the bookkeeping. Well, does that include profit first? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know how I don't know how
I would hope
not to
so.
do profit first, especially if we're doing your books. So
Yeah.
if anybody is looking, we cause a lot of bookkeepers to get fired. So I always say, if you're looking to fire your bookkeeper, give us a call. We only work with construction companies,
Love it.
and we will come in and set it. Like if you've been struggling with job costing and all of the nerdy systems integration stuff, like your QuickBooks to your project management to your job cost codes to your to receipt documentation, all of that kind of stuff, we're gonna plug it in for you. So as I say, it's bookkeeping for contractor, but bookkeeping on steroids, so that you never
Yeah.
have to log into your QuickBooks again. So that business, or that side of the business, called the Data Mule Agency. So you can go to datamuleagency.com, or you'll get there through any of my other websites, or you can go to shawnvandyke.com. So
Awesome.
if you're looking for a bookkeeper, then you can schedule an operational assessment with us. We'll break down what's working, what's not working, and I'll just tell you the honest truth about it. And that's what I always say is like, hey, you can disagree with my tactics and my strategy, but we're not going to argue about math, because I didn't
Yeah.
invent it. God did, and he's not changing it.
Oh man, I love it. And you heard it here first, folks. This is Shawn Van Dyke. Go reach out to him. And this is now what you guys always ask me, like, who's a good recommendation for a bookkeeper for construction companies? He just said it right there. Reach out to them, datamuleagency.com. We'll drop the link in the description as well. Shawn, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for all that you do for the industry, and excited for whatever comes next after this.
Hey, Luke, thanks for having me on, man. Would love to come back and be an even bigger dirtbag. So
Heck yeah. We'll have you on Dirtbags University, which is our webinar, and we'll dive even deeper into it.
awesome, man.
All right, man. Cheers.
Good to see you.